Well, hi guys, it's Miss Jessica here with Fibo Kids Art Academy. Welcome to our class where we're going to ask the question, what is inside the earth? So I hope you guys are ready to learn a lot and have fun making a really awesome project. Well, let's take a look at what we're going to do today. We're going to be creating our very own diagram of the Earth's core, and there's many layers. I'm going to show you guys how to draw and color and create this right here. Now, we need a lot of different materials for today, so I'm going to run through those now. We're of course going to need a pencil and an eraser, but if you also have a Sharpie, that'll work really well so we can write some things down on our diagram too. I also have this nice thin Sharpie here. It just helps me write a little smaller. I'm also going to be using oil pastels and watercolor to color in all of my layers. Now, you don't have to use these if you don't have them, but if you do, I recommend because we're going to have a lot of fun creating some really cool textures. Then I'll be using some paper. We're going to need 2 pieces of white paper. The first one is for our circles, and the second one is our diagram that I'm going to be creating with you guys today too. Also, I have a piece of brown paper here. That's going to be for the background. So if you have a dark colored paper or even just another white paper to use, that'll work the best. Now, to hold all this together and to make all of these layers move, I have what's called a rivet right here for the middle. It's a very small little piece of metal, and you can be able to poke it through and bend it on the other side, so that way it stays. Now, if you don't have this, it's totally fine. You can do many different things to create this effect of moving it. So whatever works the best for you, you can also just glue it all together. It won't be able to move, but at least you'll see all the layers. All right, so go ahead and grab your materials. Make sure to get some scissors handy as well so we can do some cutting. But we're gonna start by drawing all of our circles for our layers of the earth. So I'm gonna move all my things out of the way. While I'm getting ready, let's look at some pictures of the earth. Here's a nice structure, but before we get started on that, take a look at the earth itself. This is a beautiful picture. This is what Earth looks like from outer space, and astronauts probably took this photo for us. Now, this is our top layer. This is where we live. You can see there's lots of water, the ocean, lots of clouds, and the land. Now, if you start to dissect and go inside, you're going to see lots of different layers. These are the things that we will talk about today. There's going to be 3 layers that we'll mention, and we're going to start, by looking at some of these. So we have the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. So my crust is where we walk right now. So we are on top of the earth here. Then we have the mantle, which is going to be all that lava that you guys have probably seen in pictures or from erupting volcanoes. Then we have our outer core and inner core, which is the hottest part. As you get closer and closer, the outer core is actually made of liquid and the inner core is totally solid. So I'm going to show you guys a little more facts about each one, but now that we know what we're going to be drawing, it's going to make it a lot more fun to draw our picture. So have a piece of white paper handy, your pencil, some scissors, maybe an eraser just in case. Now today in class, I'll be using a Sharpie. That's so you guys can see it a little bit better than my pencil lines, but make sure to go ahead and have your pencil and paper ready. We're going to start with our largest circle first. This is going to be where we see the green and blue for our world. Now this circle should be your biggest. Imagine if I place it in the top corner, takes up almost half. This is also roughly about the size of a paper plate or a regular plate. So if you want to go grab something to trace, you can do that as well. But I'm just going to go ahead, use my eyes and my pencil and draw a big circle. Go ahead, you guys can add that. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because the earth is not a flat surface. Think about when you walk outside, you see mountains and hills and valleys. So it can be a little bumpy as well. Now before we cut that out though, we're going to draw 3 more circles. We need to add different layers. We're going to need a next size here. That would be called the mantle. Then we're going to make a little smaller one for the outer core and a small circle for the inner core. So each one of these has a fun word that we will be putting on there as well. All right, let's draw our next smallest one. I'm going to put in the opposite corner. If you can't fit all of them on your one paper, just grab another piece. All right, so this circle needs to be a little bit smaller than our first, but we don't want it to be tiny because we're going to have to make some more circles. This could be roughly the size of maybe a smaller size paper plate, which maybe looks a little bit like this one. All right. After that, let's make one more that's just a little bit smaller as we're going down. So I'm going to draw one more up in the top corner. Maybe this is about the size of a cup that you might use to drink water out of. And then I'm going to draw my smallest circle in the corner. Now, even though it's my smallest one, I don't want to make it teeny tiny. We're going to have to cut this out and write some stuff on it. So please make sure that you don't make it itty bitty. All right, now we can start to cut some things out. So whenever you're ready, grab some scissors and we're going to begin to cut each circle. Now, I like to kind of cut them into different parts here, so it's easier to cut them out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and begin to cut mine. Please pause your video, finish cutting those, and then when we're done, we'll all come back together and finish creating our picture. All right, so at this point, we should have all of our circles cut out from biggest to smallest. Now, if you again need more time, just go ahead and pause that video and finish up your circles. But now we're going to start to color and paint them. If you guys don't have the same materials as me, totally fine, but I do recommend following along on how I'm coloring them because that is very important. As we go and start to color, I'm going to share more fun facts about each layer of the earth. Now there's a layer that we haven't created yet. It's called the crust. For that, I'm using my brown paper. You could also just use more white paper, color it brown, or even a dark paper like black or blue. But I'm going to take my largest circle, I'm going to lay it on my new paper, and I'm going to trace and cut that out. So let's go ahead, grab that new paper. This is going to be that first layer that we need, our crust. Once you trace, grab those scissors and go ahead and cut that out as well. You could definitely just use white paper. And then when you're done coloring, you can color brown, maybe paint it. But now this is all ready for us to go ahead and use. All right. Let's begin with the next layer. So we have the crust is first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. So each one of these layers needs something to it. We're going to leave the brown one alone for now. We'll add some details, words later. So I'm going to set them to the side. But now I'm going to move to my next largest one. This is going to be the top of the earth, this part right here. So let's go ahead and grab our pencil. And for this, actually, I'm going to use my oil pastels. If you would like to draw with a pencil first, so you can map out what continents that you see or different parts of the land, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just going to use my pastel and I'm going to draw with that. So I'm going to use a green today, a dark green to start. And I'm going to decide what I want to see. I added more of America, so kind of North America, South America, and a little bit of just land on the side here. Now, you notice that it is cut, but we are going to add the whole thing. And later, once it's done drying, we'll cut out a little pie slice here. So we are going to add some stuff up there just so we know. So I'm going to take that pastel and I'm going to start over on the right. And I'm just going to add some squiggly lines. So maybe this is the top where Canada is. We'll come down here. We'll make this loop like where Mexico would be part of. Maybe this is going to be a little Florida. It doesn't have to look exact. Maybe you get into South America here. Maybe this is going to be one of the poles up there. We got England and Britain, and then maybe another country. So I'm just adding squiggly lines. Go ahead, have some fun, make some green spots. We want mostly water. The earth is mostly made up of water with just a little bit of land. All right, once you're done, keep that pastel. You're going to notice mine has the paper taken off. If you're able to do that, please try, because I'm going to lay it down flat and I'm going to press lightly and I'm going to add some bumpy lines. for my grass, trying very hard to stay inside of each little piece of land here. So go ahead if you're ready, don't add too much. If you're not using pastels or crayons would be great too. You can just go ahead and color that in green however you want with whatever material you have. Now that I've done my first color green, I'm going to grab a new one. I have a lot of them here, so I'm going to grab this more olivey color, but if you only have maybe a light green, you can just go ahead and add some of that in as well. Just adding lots of different layers and colors and textures, because that's what our earth is made of. If you want to get super detailed in your earth and add a lot of stuff, please go ahead. But for me today, I'm just going to add a couple basic things and focus on my layers inside the earth. Now I'm adding some shading. This is just to give it a little bit of dark areas. And I'm just going to kind of scribble it randomly around, not necessarily deciding one way or another why I'm putting that dark spot there, but it just makes it look really nice and detailed. I'm also going to add a little bit of this gold color. Now you don't have to do this part, but think about sometimes on Earth we have big desert spots. So right here in America, in the middle, we get a lot of desert. And down here in South America even, we get some very dry climates that may have more sand than other things. So I'm going to add a little bit of that gold color, just pressing very soft and kind of scribbling everywhere. Now that's it for the green. I'm going to leave that. And then I'm actually going to add something super fun. So go ahead and finish that up. But again, if you need more time, just press pause and finish coloring your green. Now I'm going to add some clouds. Later, I'll be using watercolor to paint on top. But if you don't have your watercolor today, you don't need to add clouds first. You can do that second. Go ahead and you can start to do some blue for that water. But if you are going to color with me, take that white oil pastel and we're going to scribble our clouds on. So it should end up looking something like this. I like to have fun with mine. I take my white and I just kind of scribble it onto that empty spot. Not filling the whole thing in, but just adding some lines. Then you can go over the green a little bit. It's okay if it starts to smear the color, that's all right. Just add a little bit. Now you might be thinking, I can't see that white. How do I know? We're about to add our watercolor and you'll be able to see a lot of it. All right, finish that step up, put those pastels back and get that paint ready to go. For our paint today, we're going to be using blue. Now you can have fun with what kind of blue, dark, light, maybe a mixture of both. I'm okay with anything. Be creative and have fun. So I have my water here. I'm going to use a large brush, dip, wipe, and I'm going to use a darker blue, 1, 2, 3, swirl it a few times, and I'm just going to paint right on top of the blue water, and you're going to notice your clouds start to appear. So go ahead and let's take some blue. Again, if you want to do more than one, you can. I might do a little bit of layering. I'm going to try not to go on the green, and that's just because I still might see some of that blue appear if I did. So just be super careful as you paint. Have fun though. Maybe you're just coloring with your markers or color pencils. Add some nice details into your picture. I'm going to give it a little bit of my light blue here. It's a little more of a turquoise. I'm just going to add some of that into my water. Now be careful, don't add too much. We do need this to dry fully before we can start to put it together and build, which is why we're drawing and painting this first. Now, if you want to, you can even add a little bit of green to the grass. So I'm going to add some light green or a yellow green. And I'm just going to quickly paint, and it fills in all the white spaces that we didn't quite fill in with our pastels. You don't have to do this. If you kind of like the texture you created, you can just keep it. I'll just add a little bit. All right, now that is done. Do not cut anything yet because we want it to dry fully. So when you're finished, carefully pick that up and move it out of the way. You may need to clean off your spot like me, and if you have some sort of towels or maybe some sort of cloth, go ahead and grab that. And we're gonna clean that off now. So I'm just gonna use my towel here. We're gonna get ready for our next 3. Now we're going to go ahead and just add all of our pastel first, then we'll paint it all together at the end. All right, now our next part we're gonna talk about is the inner core. So I'm gonna pop up a little information here. We'll come back to it later on. It's our smallest piece as well. So grab the inner core. This is the smallest one that we have, little baby circle. This is the hottest of all of the layers because it is in the middle. It's about 9,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Imagine how hot. When it gets 100 degrees, we get really, really warm and start to sweat. So think about how hot that might be. It's almost as hot as the surface of the sun as well. So that's kind of cool to imagine. This lives inside of our Earth. And it also spins the fastest. So we know that our Earth spins really fast, even though we can't feel it. It still does. The center actually moves quicker than everything else. Kind of a cool fact. All right, we're gonna take this circle and we're gonna grab a white again, just like we did for those clouds. And we're gonna swirl in the middle, creating a nice swirling texture. Don't color it in though. So I'm gonna take it and I'm just gonna swirl all around, trying to get those edges. And that's it. When you're done, go ahead and move it to the side. If you're not using watercolors with me today, just take some yellow and add some more swirls. Just like that. We want it to be the lightest and brightest part. That's it for that one. So put that to the side. And next is going to be the outer core. That's our next circle here. It's just a little bit bigger than our first. So here's some facts about it. It actually, as it is being heated up, it turns into liquid. So it's just like the inner core, but it's a little cooler. And it also creates electrical currents, which is pretty cool to think of too. So you might hear Earth's electrical field. It's all created because of this layer. So that's a cool fun fact. It's made of liquid metal and it creates its own electricity. For this one, we're going to represent that with orange. So we're going to create kind of a nice analogous colors here. Those ones look good together, orange and yellows and reds. For this, we're going to have fun. So I want you to take some sort of orange color, whatever that might be. I'm going to do a little bit of a lighter orange here. And we're just going to add lines all the way around from the center. Doesn't have to be perfectly center, almost like a big sun. We're going to go all the way around. You can add a whole bunch. Then once you're done adding some lines, pressing nice and hard, grab a red or red-orange. And we're gonna add more on top, just like so. Make sure to leave some paper showing through though, because we are gonna add some watercolor on top. That's it for that one. When you're done, just go ahead and set it to the side. If you need to clean off your table, you can. I'll do that in just a second. Our last layer that we're gonna be coloring here today is called the mantle. I like this one a lot. It's going to be the next largest here before Earth. Some fun facts about the mantle. This is where our lava comes from. It's volcanic rock, or kimberlite is another more scientific word for it. The upper part of it that's super close to our surface is called the lithosphere. So those are some really cool fun terms that you guys can use and remember and share those facts with your friends and family. So we're gonna go ahead and do the mantle. Now it is lava, so we're gonna kind of use some lava colors, lots of red and even some black. So let's start with our pastels. We're gonna use some orange and a lot of red. So grab an orange. I'm gonna use a red orange even. And I'm gonna pretend this is my middle, so I'm gonna add a little dot. And we're gonna do something similar to this one where it was in a star shape, but we're going to go side to side and we're going to kind of lightly scribble our color in. So again, kind of swirl it around side to side, and I'm turning as I go. Don't color all of it. I'm barely touching my paper. Just getting a little bit of that color on. Then I'm gonna take my red and I'm gonna press a little harder. Still gonna scribble, but I wanna press a little harder now. Again, if it starts to fill the whole thing in, maybe you don't add as much. All the way around. And that's it for that one. So you can go ahead when you're done, put that back. So now we have our 3 circles here and our yellow, orange, and red. And we're gonna grab out our watercolors. Again, if you are still working on that, just press pause and go ahead and press play when you're ready to paint. All right, we're gonna have fun with our colors here. So we're going to start with our smallest one. Remember, this is the inner core. And we're going to paint it yellow. So grab some paint. If you just did your white, you're going to see it now up here. So let's get some yellow. And we're going to paint right over those oil pastels. You may need to get lots of water, so that way it can slide right over the top of the pastel. And it's light, but that's okay. When something gets so hot, it actually turns a little white, which is kind of cool to think. So it is a little bit lighter, but that's good. We want the center of our earth to be hot and light. All right, clean your brush and get ready for the outer core. This one is going to be a little more orangey. It's going to be a little cooler. So I'm going to use my large brush now. We're going to do something called wet into wet. To start that though, we're just going to paint the whole thing yellow. So let's get some more color, a little more yellow, and just paint right over all that pastel. Again, if you're not painting with me today, that's okay. You can just go ahead and add some more details to your different layers. Now, when you do wet into wet, it needs to stay wet. So I'm going to be very quick here. I'm going to grab my next brush and I'm going to add some orange on top. Now watch when I do this, take my orange and I'm just going to poke my paper and you should see that color start to spread around all over. So go ahead and try that out. If you feel like you don't have enough water, just take some water and you can add it right to it. And then maybe get a little bit more orange and it will create a really nice layer for that inner mantle, or I should say outer, excuse me. All right, once you're done though and you feel like you got enough, go ahead and let that dry. This one could take the longest because it has the most water on it, so be very careful. The last one is my mantle, and this is our lava. So we're actually gonna paint it black. If you don't have paint, you could always just take a black pastel and quickly do some scribbly lines over it so it looks like that lava. Black can get really messy, so just be careful. It's a very dark color. That and purple are probably our two darkest in this paint set that I have. So I'm gonna be very careful. I don't need to get too much. And watch when I paint, it starts to fill in all those white areas and leaves the red and the orange peeking through. So if it looks super, super dark, just take your brush and just kind of push those puddles around everywhere. We do want it to be a pretty dark color, like lava, so please add a lot of paint there, but if you start to not see your color, that means you have too much water. You can just take your brush and gently go over it, or even take a towel and kind of tap it so to get the water off. But again, we don't need big puddles of water and color on here because we want it to dry. All right, once it's all filled in with the nice dark black, let that dry. I'm gonna move it out of the way and we're gonna clean everything up. Now we won't need our watercolors again, so you can just set those aside, clean those brushes. Even if you need to go take a break to do that, you can. But great job, you guys. While this dries, we're actually going to create a diagram and write down some of the information that we learned. So I'm going to lay my layers up here at the top and I'm going to grab my paper. Now you might not have this written yet, that's okay. What I'm going to suggest is if you would like to, go ahead and pause your video, take a pencil and your paper, write layers of the earth, add 1, 2, 3, 4 rings, and you can draw little boxes to it. That's totally fine. Or grab that paper right at the top and just follow along with me, or just hang out and listen and hear all the facts about each layer. So again, you do not have to do this exactly like me. You can just listen and watch, but you are more than welcome to pause and draw this and follow along. All right, so I'm actually going to use my diagram here to help me. So let me set it back. And all you have to do is turn all these little dials here. And now it's a mystery on what each one is. So I'm going to actually get a thin Sharpie. You can just use your pencil. That's okay. You don't have to use a Sharpie like me, but you're more than welcome to do so. All right, our first layer we're going to talk about is our inner core. So if we take our little diagram here, that's the middle, and I'm gonna turn that layer until we find inner core. And it's the smallest. So I'm gonna find on my paper The smallest one, move my arrow, that's right here. I'm going to write inner core at the top, so that way I remember this is what it's about. Inner core. And I'm going to put a little number 1 because that's my first fact. All right, let's pop up a couple more facts just like before, and now I'm going to say even more things about it. All right, so our inner core is about 4,000 miles away from the surface. That's really far. That would be a couple trips here around our Earth to kind of get to that depth below the surface. It also is made of iron and nickel. So it's the most dense. It just means that it's really heavy and it's in the middle of our Earth. I mentioned before it's hot. So I'm going to write that in my box because that's a super important fact. And I'm going to capitalize it and put an exclamation point. It's the hottest part of our Earth. It's 9,800 degrees Fahrenheit. That is hotter than anything we could ever sustain, but it's in the middle and it kind of helps our Earth to move and to prosper. All right, our next one is our outer core. So I'm going to move over here a little bit. Outer core. I'm going to write that. Outer core. Now the outer core is still made of iron and nickel, but it's all liquid. It got so hot that it just melted away. It's actually heated by radioactive decay from 2 different types of materials, uranium and thorium. So those are just 2 materials we find in our Earth, and they get heated up so much that it melts that iron and nickel. It does create a lot of electricity. So Earth has a magnetic field, and it starts from within the Earth and it shoots out into space. It's about 3,220 miles below the surface, so that's just a little bit less than the inner core. All right, we're going to write all liquid inside because that's pretty cool. It's the only layer of our Earth, besides the water on the top, that is all liquid. I'm also going to write creates electrical currents because that's a pretty cool fact about it. Honestly, scientists don't really know why or how. It just does. So that's pretty cool in science. Sometimes we don't really know why, and that's why scientists learn so much because they're trying to answer those questions. All right, our next one is our mantle. The mantle is a really cool place on Earth. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over here to my next one. Mantle. The mantle is about 18.6 miles below the surface. That's not very far at all. About 18 miles might be a trip to a favorite restaurant about 20 minutes away from your house. So it's really not too far down. And there's, at some places, it's the thickest of our layers. So it's so thick, thicker than any of the other layers we have. But it can get super thin. And when that happens, it can cause a lot of different things. So we're going to talk mostly about its places. There's a place called the lithosphere. It's at the very top of the mantle. So that's a really cool fact to kind of think about that word. This is where diamonds are found, and the diamonds get produced inside that volcanic ash and lava, and then it bubbles up to the surface from the volcanic rock or the kimberlite, and then that's how we find diamonds here up on the top layer, which is going to be our crust. So those are just a couple different fun facts about the mantle. It's also a semi-solid, which kind of imagine caramel candy, where you can hold it in your hand like a rock, but if you squeeze it really tight, it kind of melts. All right, we're going to write thickest layer. That's a really important fact because no other layers are like this. Thickest layer. Diamonds are important to remember. So I'm going to write diamonds and volcanic rock. You can also write other facts if you have more room. That's up to you. Our last one we're going to discuss is the crust. So let's see, that was number 2, 3, number 4. We're going to call it the crust. This is the part at the very top. It's not quite the surface of our Earth just yet. We're getting there. There's a little bit underneath it. So the crust is the Earth's shell. So imagine a hard-boiled egg. It's got all those layers inside and the shell is on top protecting it. It's very, very thin. It's the thinnest layer of all of our layers here in our Earth. It is made up of a lot of different things, including oxygen. That's really important for the crust. There's some places in the ocean, so right underneath the Hawaiian Islands, where it is the thinnest. It is only 3 miles away from the Earth's surface, which is not far at all. That might just be a trip down the road to go to the store. And that is where we have a lot of volcanoes coming, because the mantle gets so close to the crust and it's very thin that it just pops, and that's how you get volcanoes, which is why Hawaii has a whole bunch. There's also tectonic plates. Now, you might have heard that word before, but imagine a whole bunch of puzzle pieces next to each other. They move too, really, really slowly. They move about 1.2 to 2 inches a year. That's not a lot at all. But when it does happen, it can cause volcanoes to erupt and even earthquakes to happen. So even though it moves super slow, up here on the surface, it creates a lot of excitement to where we are. All right, for this one, I'm gonna write it's a shell, because that's important to remember. It's also the thinnest thing too, and it's made of tectonic plates. No other surface is. Tectonic plates that move slow. All right, now again, if you want to write more facts, you can go back and take a look and see. But this is going to be it for our little diagram. I do recommend, though, have some fun and take your time. Maybe you want to color code everything. You can grab some markers and you can say, all right, well, in my diagram, our mantle is going to be brown. So I can take my brown marker and I can color in the mantle brown. So if you would like to, definitely do that as well. So I'm going to just outline around, and that will just be that first layer we see here. Then I'll just fill it in. Maybe you want to use watercolors, you can do that too. And I'm going to fill that in. Then once you're done, maybe you want to move on to the next section. And you guys can just keep on going over and over again and add lots of fun colors. And you can even have it match your picture. You just won't have anything for the earth on top. All right, if you want to go ahead and finish that, you may. Just pause your video, take some time. We do need everything to be dry. So if your stuff is still super wet, I recommend pausing, take your time, maybe add a couple more colors. So my next thing would be, so we have crust, then my mantle is, I think I said that wrong. So my crust is brown, my mantle is my lava. So maybe I want to use some red or orange, something like that, because I want to kind of represent that color. You can go ahead and grab that. I think I'm actually going to use a peach for this one, make it a little bit different. And I can take my time, fill that in, outlining around, and filling that in. So please go ahead again if you would like to. Take your time to do so. You can decorate the outside. I just had fun with some colors that I really like, but maybe you want to draw pictures of volcanoes so you remember, okay, that's where the mantle is, the volcanic ash, but then it erupts through the crust, and that's how we get volcanoes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish up by assembling everything together, but please finish coloring that in if you would like. All right, let's grab all of our layers, making sure they're completely dry. And don't forget the earth. We're going to start to stack things on top. So first we're going to take the brown. Next, we're going to grab our lava, which is our mantle. Then we're, going to go to the outer core. So that's our yellowish orange. And then the inner core right in the center. Now we got to poke a hole through all of these, but eventually then you'll see the earth covers on top, and it's like it's revealing everything underneath. Now to do this, there's many ways. You may need assistance from a parent or someone a little older there with you, and that's totally fine. Please just make sure you be safe and have fun. I have these little rivets here that I'm going to stick in the middle. Again, if you don't have it, it's okay. You don't have to do that part. I like to take a pencil, and I'd like to find the center, and I'm just going to draw a little circle. Now this circle is going to help to make sure I get the center through all of them. So I'm going to grab the first layer and I'm actually going to poke it through with my pencil. Something else that works really well, again, make sure this is sharp too, is a toothpick or maybe a pen, something that just has a dull point. You don't want it to be too sharp because you don't want it to poke in all the way through. All right, once you get that, again, if you need some help, please make sure to find that. I'll lay it on top and I'm actually going to draw a little circle through that hole and I now see it on the other side. Then I'm going to take my next layer with my pencil, carefully poke that through, lay it down again, and draw a little circle. All right, there's the next center. Poke that through very carefully and lay it down. Draw my circle again, and one more time, poke that through my last layer. Go ahead and finish that up. If you need help, please ask for that assistance. But we're now going to start to put this thing through the center as well. We also want to make sure we can stick this on our earth too. So what I'm going to do is actually flip my earth over and put my little circle in the center. I'll draw my little hole again, my little circle, and I'll poke that through the middle. All right, now that I have everything with holes in the center, I can start to layer that cake together. So I'm going to take my little rivet, or however you're going to stick it together, put it through the middle of my earth. Then I'm going to put my small inner core, outer core, mantle, and the crust. Now, once it's poked all the way through, you can just separate the two little ends here and push them down nice and flat. And there you have your very own earth that turns and everything underneath. Now, you might be thinking, well, how do I see everything? We're going to do some cutting. So I'm just going to find a place on my earth I don't mind cutting into. So I'm going to do this top corner like I did before. I'll take my pencil and I'm just going to draw two lines, almost like I'm cutting a cake. Now we want them to be pretty far apart, but you can always cut more later. So be careful, don't cut too much. All right, I think that's a pretty good amount. Then you're going to take your scissors, and if you want some assistance from a parent, please go ahead and do so. Because what I don't want to do is cut things underneath, and I also don't want it to touch this rivet here in the middle, otherwise it won't hold it together. So when I cut on my two lines, make sure you don't go all the way to the center. All right, once you're done, you will reveal all of your layers of your earth underneath. Now you guys, that was pretty great. We did a lot of awesome work, but we got to remember what each layer is. So if you have your diagram here, or maybe you just took some notes or want to follow along, we're going to label each one of these now. Grab maybe a Sharpie or a pencil, something to write on top of. We're going to begin with the brown. This is our crust. So we're going to write crust on the top. I'll go ahead and leave that up here. There's a word here for us to spell. C-R-U-S-T. Nice and big. Next on our lava layer, that's the mantle. So our mantle is M-A-N-L-T. Oh, excuse me, T-L. I like to keep mine in a line, but it's okay if it gets a little off center. After that, we have the outer core. Now try to write a little smaller. I'm gonna write outer, O-U-T-E-R, core, C-O-R-E. And the last one, our littlest area, is the inner core. Now this one, I'm gonna try my best to write nice and small. Inner is I-N-N-E-R, core, C-O-R-E. And great job, you guys. That is actually the end of our project today. So wonderful job. You built your whole layer of your earth. Now you can have fun. You can test yourself. You can hide them all away and you can test saying, okay, I know the brown layer is the crust. And you can push that forward, ding, ding, you got it right. And you can go ahead, maybe even write some fun facts on it if you want. or keep that next to your diagram so you guys can remember. But wonderful job. Great job, you guys. Now we answered our question, what is in the earth? We know we have our crust, our mantle, outer and inner cores. Each one has a function that will help the earth prosper. So it's important that we have all those listed and we learn a little bit about them. If you guys had a lot of fun today and you enjoyed this lesson and our fun art, make sure to join us for our science and art camp that will be happening this summer in 2021. You guys can go to our website, FiboKidsArtAcademy.com, find our summer camps, and take a look at all the ones we have. In this one specifically, we'll be able to have fun creating art, learning about science, and also making fun experiments. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope to see everyone again soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.